a larger image. Right now, your document size is the pixel dimensions of what you're going to capture, so it's not going to be super high res. It's 1300 by 975. If you want to make it bigger, what you can do is you can change this to, like, you can turn off proportional. You can do like 1024 tab 1024 and then hit resize. We'll do, you know what, we'll do 2048 by 2048, and then we'll hit resize, yes, and it'll kind of skew your image. Control N to clear it, drag her back out. Now before you think, okay, here she is on the frame, and now I'm just going to go to texture, grab dock to grab the pixels. Make sure you go here to zoom and zoom out, because all of those extra pixels are way outside of your field of view here. So you probably don't want to sculpt with a giant document, because that's a lot of memory going towards nothing that you're actually using. But if you're capturing images here, go ahead and make your document size big enough to get you a nice render. So we can take this, we can do a BPR render. Just for preview purposes, if I'm just drawing over something, I don't need SPIX cranked way up, so I'll drop that down to 0. And we'll go to render. Make sure, sometimes I have my external render as Keyshot turned on. We'll go into Keyshot 2 in just a second. So we'll hit BPR. That'll render out some shadows, and if, you know, under render properties we have shadows turned on, so it gave us some shadows here. Go to texture. Well, a couple different ways. You can go to texture, grab dock, or you can go to render pass, and you can just click the shaded button, and you can actually throw out your depth and your shadow maps and your mask, but we're just going to do a paint over, so I'm not going to worry about all that. The other thing we can do is do kind of a pen and ink render. So I'm going to go here to our basic material, just underneath our standard materials here. And we did a little bit of this on the other channel, but I think you guys will like it too. If I go over here to material, modifiers, we have a diffuse and a specular that we're going to play with. Let me zoom in just a little bit here so you can see a little bit better. And I'll zoom in on her just a bit, because we're going to talk about spec and stuff like that. So our diffuse just tells how much diffuse is going to show up. You can crank that up to 100 if you want. Our specular, if we turn it up, it gets shiny. If we turn it down, it gets matte. To control the fall off of the shininess, you can open the specular curve, and if you grab this thing and drop it down, it gets really wet. And if you pull that up, it gets really broad. So you can kind of change what type of specular you have here. If you want to get fancy, you can also go down here to you can switch between a Fong and a blend, but we'll just leave it alone for now. Sorry, I keep touching my mic. You can do the same thing for the diffuse curve. Now, okay, so this little thing here, just a little bit of ZBrush knowledge. If you take this and you pull this ring in, that will actually change the fall off, or it should. It doesn't seem to be doing much now. The idea is it would tighten up that corner. It doesn't seem to be doing it. Now, if you want to make it really tight, you can pull this off and then pull it back on, and then it'll be a tight corner. Or you can just pull it off and let go, and then it'll just delete it. And then just click again, it'll make a new dot, and then you can just go in here and make all the dots you want. So, ZBrush basics. So we'll go ahead and tighten up that spec a little bit. We're going to go back into our diffuse curve, and if we want to get kind of a Sin City pen and ink look, what you want to do is crank up the strength here. And as we crank up that strength, it's going to start really defining the dark and light areas of your diffuse map. Now, if you want to posterize that or give it more steps in between on and off, you can take your steps and you can kind of start posterizing a little bit here. And that'll just give you more values in between black and white. And we're going to knock that strength back just a tad here, so it's not so obvious. Now, the thing with this is, so now you can see it's starting to get posterized. We have it, let's go back to steps 1 and then crank the strength up. So we have a really crispy diffuse, but our spec is still kind of fall off plasticky looking. You can do the exact same thing to your specular curve, crank that strength up. Now it's on or off, and then you can change your steps to kind of start posterizing this out. So, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps from light to not anything. So you can kind of change that. As well as you can also, while you're here, you can go ahead and change your specular fall off just by clicking and grabbing those. You can do your specular amount, so you can turn it all the way off if you want to, if you don't like it, or you can kind of dial it in just a bit. Same thing with your diffuse, same thing with your diffuse curve. You can still play with that, and now you can get kind of this render. Your light is also very important. We'll grab the light menu. And we'll go ahead and pull that around. Now, so you can do like a high noon, or you can light from one side and then you can open up another light and you can do a fill light. Let's go ahead and make it a different color here. We'll make it a cool color on that side, and we can take this light and make it a little warmer maybe. And it's all real time. You can add as many lights as you want to. And the power of doing it in the material is you can assign different basic materials, or even if you want to get fancy and start layering your materials, you can add like double shader and tri shader and quad shader. You can layer 1, 2, 3, and 4. You see where it says S1, S2, S3, and S4. Those shaders will allow you to kind of blend multiple layers together. So you can kind of use that to your advantage here. As well as you can also do render. We have shadows turned on. So go into your shadow properties here, and you can change like the blur, change that down, the amount of rays, the resolution of it, the strength of it. It's at 0.75. You can drop that down if it's too heavy, or crank it up if you want it really strong. Hit BPR, and there we go. We got shadows dropped in. There's another place you can do this. If we go back to matte cap gray temporarily, you can also hit BPR, and that'll give you a BPR render. And you know what? Before we do that, let's go back to our strength of our shadow and drop that down just a bit. Move this around. There we go. And now that we've rendered out a BPR, we can now go into our render properties. And underneath the BPR filters, you got a bunch of Photoshop type filters in here. So F1 is selected but not on yet. Do open circle to turn it on. We'll change this to posterize, and we'll change the posterized value like down to 2, and you can see as we kind of step through, it's posterizing this for us. You can change the opacity of it, so you can go back down to 0 and it's nothing, and then you can start dialing in how much posterization you want. So this is kind of a global effect that you can get in ZBrush. And of course, if you want to layer these things, you can turn on F2, turn that on. This is doing a blur, so you can like change the opacity of that blur. You can do sharpen, posterize, a bunch of stuff in here. We can do noise. The noise we can drop. We'll like crank that up. And then you can even do the blend mode. So if you want to do like multiply, it'll multiply the noise. If you want to do screen or difference, it'll do, well, difference isn't going to work that much. You can screen the noise. So you can kind of do a bunch of operations in there. Glad you made it. Thanks for showing up. So you can do it globally in the BPR render filters, or you can do it in a material by material basis with the materials here. So if you like this one, you can back this thing off. And we'll say you are rendered. And oh, we still got filters turned on. Off, off, render. Because every time you BPR render, it's going to grab any filters you have turned on. Texture, grab dock. We can export this. ZBrush female high res, sure, we'll call that ZGrab02. And then we'll go grab our other texture we made and export that as ZGrab01. And if you want to get rid of all the memory hog that is the 2048 that we made, just go ahead and clear your canvas, go out of edit mode. Turn off your texture here. By the way, if you ever have like an 8K texture loaded over here, it's really going to slow down ZBrush, so just turn that off if you're not using it. Go to document, new document. No, we don't need to save changes. That'll make a new document. If you want your new document to fill up this entire space here, go to document, W size, new document, and it'll just fill that up. And now we can now take this into Keyshot. So let's just turn on matte cap gray. We'll go to render, external render, a Keyshot, and we'll do kind of the same thing we just did, just with Keyshot. It's got a few options in there. Hit BPR, and then it'll shoot it over to Keyshot. We'll shoot that to the top here, if it loads up. Cool. Oh man, you missed a bunch. We made a wing thing. Oh, ZBrush still sending it over. Wait for it to respond. Still receiving things. Yeah, we basically went into Marvelous Designer and made like a creature wing membrane creator that we used layers for in ZBrush, and then we went and made a pair of pants. Talked about UVing and Z-remeshing stuff from Marvelous Designer. There she is. So here she is. Now if we want to do kind of the same thing, I'm going to go down here to our Toon shader. And we have outlines and fills. Let's just do outline. We'll do Toon outline. And you can drag it into individual parts here if you want to. I'm just going to do it to our entire mesh. And now we can change our contour angle to pick up more of her details here. And contour width we can kind of play with. Contour quality. We can turn on environmental shadows, so she'll pick up environment shadows. We can change the environment that she's being lit by. I'm going to do a quick high noon. Let's see, environments. Actually, I'm going to go to lighting, and we'll do a product render environment, HDRI editor. You're not going to see this window, but just give me a second. Sun and sky. I'm just going to drop that sun down just a bit. There we go. So you can do sun and sky in Keyshot. I like it in Octane. Octane's got a really good one. Keyshot's a CPU renderer. I did it at a Ryzen event that AMD had. Just kind of demoed that off, so it uses, now I'm not on a Ryzen right now, I wish I was, but I'm using all these cores to kind of just real-time render this. Now it's not that impressive because it's a Toon shader, but let's see what's going on with ground illuminations, interior product scene. We got material over here. Oh, shadow multiplier. I'm going to drop this down. There we go. So now you can kind of dial in some shadows on her. So we can kind of scoot this around. And we can also go in here. We can go to environment, our environment tab. We'll go to like outdoor. We can put her in some dirt. And then that lighting environment will render her out, and then you can hold down control and you can spin that around. If you don't want to see that background, just go in environment here, turn on color, drop that down, and now you have kind of a Toon shaded thing that you can now you can either take a screenshot down here or just render out. If you want to just do regular old ZBrush or Keyshot stuff, just to kind of do a little previs, let's go ahead and undo until we're just back to, the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to have to break all these material links, which I guess probably wouldn't take that long if I can do it by multiples. Or I can also just pass the model back in from ZBrush. It's not a big deal. There's a file reset. And again, I'm with streaming and CPU usage and a laptop. It's not exactly lighting anything on fire, performance-wise. All right, I'll stop bugging it. Basically, let's go back here. Let's go ahead and kill that. I'm just going to do another quick, we'll throw it back in a Keyshot here. Yeah, they look pretty cool, man. I'm digging those cores for shores because, yeah, if I'm doing anything like Marvelous Designer is really intensive on your CPU. Anything simulation-wise, and Keyshot is very CPU intensive. You can also use GPU renders like Redshift. I use Redshift and Octane a lot. And then you can just stack GPUs for days and use those. And they'll really, really crank through some heavy stuff. But if you just want to do like regular old Keyshot, you can go in here to your materials here. We could do metal. You can drop on some nickel polished on here, and then go into your material here. You can just start dropping nickel polished on multiple items in here. You can double click. You can change the roughness or the color really quickly. We'll keep that pretty shiny. There's also tons of stuff. We can go into skin, and I'm not going to do a beautiful Keyshot render here, but you know, obviously she doesn't really have any skin showing. We can show some skin though. Let's go ahead and take this visor, or you know what we can do? Let's go to scene, visor. Let's give her, wake up, where are you at? How come you're not outlining my stuff? Touch, 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 touch. Let's go to beer. Give her some beer goggles. And then in order for those to show up right, you got to go to lighting. You got to do a full simulation so you get like the light coming through and the caustics and, you know, the rays coming through and like hitting her skin and bouncing back out. Now obviously it's going to distort her face quite a bit because it's literally taking that block that I had there and putting beer into it and all the physical properties that beer has. It's recreating right there. So I'll go back to our basic render here and we'll just put black chrome. Or, I mean, if you wanted to, let's do, and she's also got a lot of layered stuff in here. So this isn't a really great Keyshot demo by any means. It's not really set up for that, but you can do like liquid water, and you can make like these shoulder pads made out of water, and we'll change that lighting back to full. And now it'll start refracting, and now because it is a full simulation, it's casting a lot, doing a lot of ray bounces and caustics and stuff. It is pretty intensive too. But you can see, now we can see through this water. And let's go ahead and change our environment to something a little bit more. And we'll go back to our environment here. So you can make it like gemstones, you can make it plastic. Plastic's pretty, isn't that bad on performance. We'll do like a hard, shiny red plastic instead. And we'll go back to our basic real quick. So we can do material, hard shiny red plastic here, and then chrome black here, and then nickel here. So you can just kind of drag and drop all day long. Hold down control and you can spin that environment map around. If you want to bring that back, see what it's doing. And if you want to make her look like she's lit inside of a studio, we can go here to our environments. Let's go to studio. Excuse me. And we'll do like a overhead panels. Now it looks like she's in a car commercial or something. And ZBrush has some cool ones. Put her in Barcelona. Another thing we can do, oh, you know what? Do I have them? Yes. Okay, so here's another cool thing you do. Let's go to our materials here. Let's act like we're real artists real quick. This is my favorite thing to do, is pretend I'm an artist. So we're going to go to ZBrush, and we're going to drop on, what is this one? Chavant. So let's say we're going to pretend like we actually modeled this thing in clay. So we're going to drop it into ZBrush here, and we're going to drop our environment back to Studio. Let's go back to the startup here. I think that's a pretty good one. And we're going to change our backplate to be like a ZBrush workshop. Like a little clay workshop here. So I'm just going to click and drag that in. And if I back this off, now it'll look like we made a little clay sculpture here, and we can go into our environment settings. And we can kind of change the brightness a little bit. And you can also hold down control and change the lighting to kind of match. So the light direction is coming from here and casting a shadow over here. You can also, you know, you kind of want to match up her perspective as well. Let's go ahead and go to lighting, product lighting. You can also, in your camera, do depth of field. You can select a point closest to the camera. So basically, see how this is sharp and then it gets blurry as it goes away? You can set your sharpness focal point, and then your focal distance is what you can change this. So it kind of is sharp here and then it kind of blurs as it goes back. So it'll kind of match. Actually, you probably need to reset that to be like front here. There we go. So I kind of set her in the scene a little bit. No, what you would do if you want to bake stuff is you can use ZBrush to bake. I go into this in my on my Gumroad. I go actually on my YouTube channel as well. Let me link you there real quick. The easiest way for me to bake, and this is what I use 99% of the time if I can help it, is this method here. So in this playlist, scroll down until you see number 125 multi-baking and painter from ZBrush. We'll definitely do a little bit of that on this channel, probably not tonight. But what you can do is you can, if you have a low poly model, you're going to want to bake your normal information and do materials for that. And I would do, honestly, I do all of that in Painter now. I used to do it in Dedo. Yeah, XNormal, I use that, and XNormal I have in the reptile creatures stuff too in my Gumroad. I go through a bunch of different baking options. ZBrush, Maya, XNormal, Nald, some others I believe. But basically, you're going to want to bake all your detail information to your low res, create PBR materials, physically based rendering materials, if that's the engine you're going for. And probably, even if you're doing stylized stuff now, it's just a nice way to keep things consistent for any style of rendering you're doing in engine. So yeah, we'll do a little bit more production stuff, but for now, we'll just stay in high-res land for a little bit longer. So anyway, we were going to do some Photoshop stuff. If everybody's cool with that. I need a drink. Soda stream. Water with carbon bubbles in it.